Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Bonnie Low-Kramen. I am coming to you on this Veterans Day live from my home in Ponte Vedra, Florida. And I am being joined by my wonderful assistant, Jen Wilner. Hi, Jen.
Hello, everybody.
Where are you?
Coming to you from a very wet but happy Veterans Day as well. So thank you to all our service members that are out there.
Yes, I want to take just a quick moment to acknowledge all of the veterans present and past, including my dad and Jen's dad. And we are, we are humbled by your service, and we thank you so much with deep, deep, deep respect. Okay. Well, here we are on Wednesday, November 11th, and the subject today is feedback. And it is a complicated subject. It's a tricky subject. But it comes up a lot in our work. And Jen, you and I were talking about feedback, and actually you and I had something happen yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And welcome to our guest from Belgium. Welcome. And hi, Regina. I'm happy to have you here from Alabama. So I was talking about feedback, and yesterday Jen and I had something happen, which was, I thought it was really interesting to bring up. I wrote a LinkedIn post thanking one of my students for calling to my attention a typo that I had in a blog post. Now, I didn't name the blog post because I have typos in more than one thing, but I really wanted to just make the point that I want to thank people for letting me know when I have typos in things. And I posted it, and then the rest, and the graphic was, "Thanks for having my back." The next thing I know, I received a message from Jen on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I'm sorry I didn't catch that typo." And I'm like, it's not her fault. Like, Jen didn't even have a chance to see the blog post I was referencing. So I decided in my assistant's brain, like, she needs feedback right now. She needs it as fast as I can get it to her. So I quickly typed out a message saying, "Hey, this is not on you. This is me. You never even saw this blog post."
No.
And so in audio is duplicated voice. I'm going to turn down my volume. Thanks, Donna Clark, for letting me know.
I don't hear it.
You don't hear it?
No, but thank you, Donna.
Yeah, I am going to just quickly see. Is that any better, Jen? I mean,
it's a little bit, no, you're a little bit too quiet now.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go back. How's this?
Much better.
Better. All right. Donna, please let us know if it's not good. Hey, Peter from Belgium. Good to see you. And hi, Vanya and Donna. So, in my assistant's head, I'm like, I have to let Jen know ASAP that it wasn't her fault. And Jen, talk about how it felt when you got that message from me.
I was relieved that it wasn't my fault. But that kind of like protective mode of that I saw something and did I see it? Was that me? Was that not me? Was I supposed to catch that? Kind of like a little bit of anxiety and ownership.
And Donna Clark, if you're hearing double, you might want to get out of StreamYard and then get back in, or catch it on another platform, because we're streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Right. So thank you so much, because other folks aren't having the issues. We love technology when it works. So back to the story, in my executive manager's mind, I knew that to address it immediately, to be decisive about it, would be helpful, because then Jen wouldn't have to be preoccupied at all with, any issues about that particular thing. So feedback, super, super important. Edwina is saying it's getting worse, the tech. We hate when that happens.
Yeah, it might be something. It might be some technology with LinkedIn.
So you might want to switch the platform.
Yeah.
So we're going to plow forward and we'll see how we proceed here. Thank you so much for bearing with us. So many of you know that I follow a leadership expert named Jack Zenger. He's out of Utah. And I've heard him speak about the subject of feedback. And one of the things he says that really resonates is the thing that staff wants most is feedback. And the thing that is rarest in the workplace is feedback. So historically, the way feedback has been given for years and years and years, decades and decades, is the annual performance review. And it is a dreaded process for the manager, believe it or not, the manager, because managers are not trained to give or receive feedback. And it's a dreaded process for the staffer because it's like all the pressure is on that one meeting. And so many assistants report back to me that they feel blindsided. Like, why didn't I know about this problem before? Why did I have to wait a whole year for this official meeting where I get this piece of paper and it's like such a shock? So I started really thinking about who can help us with this? How can we sort this out? Now, especially in a pandemic when everybody's working from home and feedback is given in a variety of ways. It's given in meetings, it's given in body language. Sometimes it's nonverbal, but historically, it's been this antiquated system that doesn't seem to be working anymore. So when I gave some thought as to who could help us with this, I realized that one of the experts in my orbit happens to be the young man I gave birth to. Believe it or not, I'm related to him. His name is Adam Kramen. Adam is an account executive at BetterWorks, based in California, but he's out of the New York office. And without further ado, I would like to bring in our expert on feedback and performance management, Adam Kramen. Thanks, Jen. There he is.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Impressed you owned up to a typo. I have to say, you owned up to a typo.
I did.
Very impressed.
I did. The best assistants know that we have to own our mistakes, right, Jen?
Absolutely.
I don't know any assistant out there who's been in this business for a very long time and doesn't mess up badly, once in a while. But we welcome all of our listeners from all over the world. Bilma, thanks for telling us that you closed the video and then you came back and it worked. The technology experts on my side of the fence all say, when in doubt, reboot, So anyway, we welcome all of you. And Adam, so you work at BetterWorks out of New York City, and it's a software that's about performance management. Can you bring us up to speed in 2020? What's the latest in performance management and feedback? What's going on?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting conversation in the back and forth that you and Jen had, kind of, and what you went into about an antiquated process. Frankly, the expectations for a performance management process are now having to meet how work actually gets done today. So work, typically everyone was in the same office and you saw everyone the same day, and it was very easy to understand how well you were doing speaking with your manager. That's just not how the world works today. And being able to give people some very clear directives on what are the most important goals that I should be setting, what kind of conversations am I having with my manager, and peer feedback, all of that is part of this performance process that people need throughout the year. Not just like you said, let's remember what happened over the last 12 months. Yeah.
So this audience, and by the way, people are waving to you all over the place, Adam. People are welcoming you to the program. This audience is used to me talking about, like negotiating for salaries. It involves putting your case in writing. And here's the thing, like you were saying that when you're day to day in the office, that it's kind of easy to get the feedback. But, one of the comments we hear all over the world is that assistants are suffering from a lack of feedback, and that sometimes that feedback is being misread. Like they're not really sure where they stand with their team, with their executives. And so what's so exciting about the software that you have is that it's involving putting the feedback in writing. Can you walk us through what does that look like? Because it's not something that's so normal.
Yeah, and you know, there are absolutely tools to support the process, right? And I think what's really important with that feedback is creating that channel, to create that ability and that safety to do that. And so, as you were mentioning, there is a tool for to create that both ways, for a manager to request feedback from a direct report and otherwise as well. But what I want to just mention this around is that the expectations today is that, frankly, a lot of feedback was happening sort of out in the ether and pretty ambiguous in a sense that not really tied to what are the most important things that I'm working on too. Because feedback, what am I getting feedback on? That's somewhat where that blindsided feeling comes from. So I think what's really dynamic today is having those different components, or having that agreement on what are those goals that we're setting, and then getting feedback off of that. Then it's much more impactful, right? Then you can make some actionable next steps off of that, because feedback without action doesn't necessarily ring true,
Right.
I find, or people don't necessarily give the kcals to it to say, well, putting in the effort to say, you know, what's going to happen from this.
So I'd be really interested in the chat if people would comment on, are you on the old-fashioned way or the other way of doing, you know, feedback in pad and paper, or are you on some kind of digital software that enables staff to give feedback to other staff and staff to give feedback to managers? Because Adam, you were saying that using the software, ideally feedback is given how often?
You know, typically you want this, you know, several times a quarter would be helpful, and depending on what that cadence looks like. And what goes into that is a lot of the change management around that, because the tenor around feedback, unfortunately, and it's just the way that it was done for so long, which is
Right.
the reason why I think we do a lot of things in the business world, essentially, that there's a really negative connotation that comes with feedback. And what was interesting from that podcast that we watched, and I believe you'll be linking it to the chat, was that ratio in the ratio of breaking down those positive to sort of negative interactions.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you
So
wanted
let
to
me
look
just
at
tell
that.
the audience that both Adam and I watched this podcast by Jack Zenger, you know, the man I was referencing, the leadership expert I was referencing earlier. Jen is going to put it in the chat so you can watch it too. It's about 50 minutes or so. And Adam, Jack was talking about the idea that most people, when they think of feedback, they think of negative feedback. You know, it's like areas of improvement. And Jack made such an important point about that when somebody receives negative feedback, that they usually know what they've done wrong. They usually do. And so talk about the 5-to-1 ratio, which both of us found so interesting.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a bunch of comments here around just kind of the cadences that people have, and so I'll go into the ratio for sure. Around what does that look like to create a ratio that, when you're giving constructive feedback, that it really resonates and that it doesn't necessarily feel like noise? Because that's what happens so often, is that because feedback has that connotation that people's brains, it's a defense mechanism. It just happens. It's kind of naturally of, if someone gets a performance review, they're going to scroll to their weaknesses right away. Not what did they do great. They scroll right to their weaknesses. It was funny that Jack mentioned that as well. But that 5-to-1 is around 5 positive pieces of feedback to the 1 constructive. So when you give that constructive feedback, it really brings some resonance.
And you made an interesting point about your age and the notion about how millennials, you talk about that a little bit, about how feedback is changing because of the demographics in our workplace right now, which we all need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I'm I'm an older millennial. I was just captured into the group on that one. And I think it's permeating obviously younger people than I, but older as well. Just with the amount of information that you can get about everything else, and the amount of feedback you get in every other component of your life. The expectation at work is that you never go home without feedback. That's sort of the sort of adage that we want to give to our customers, in a sense that people should always know kind of where they sit and have that opportunity, if they don't, to ask for that. And I think that from my generation, I think we were somewhat of the catalyst around that.
And your generation in general doesn't seem to have the kind of struggle to ask for feedback, both verbally and in writing, as some older staff does. And, we don't have any training around this subject. Again, leaders are not trained to give feedback, and staff isn't trained to, how do we receive it? How do we respond to it? And I love the fact with your software, you give people training around how to access the information. And just like with putting a business case and writing for salary negotiations, isn't it easier to ask for feedback if you're just clicking a button and saying, if you really need to know how you're doing? It just seems so smart to me, Adam, that the software that BetterWorks is putting out, and there's other softwares out there that do this,
Sure.
is making it easier for staff to understand how they're doing, how they, where they sit, where do they stand, and how great it is if they get, feedback from peers. Can you give us, you work with a number of companies, could you give us an example of how that works?
Yeah, there's several organizations that we work with, and I guess just to touch on initially what you had mentioned around, that click of the button absolutely makes it easier. The tool is just that; it's a tool. And I saw a couple comments just around, we use this or may not use properly, or it's a lot of this is around change management in a sense as well. So for BetterWorks, going into some of the customers that we work with, that's the biggest hurdle, I guess you would say. It's a mentality around an organization wanting this kind of communication to happen. Because I think it's said that people say we want a culture of feedback, but when you understand what the implications of a culture of feedback means, that comes along with D&I initiatives, or comes along with really major actionable next steps. Because if you're requesting your teams to put in those KCALs to request feedback, give feedback, going into a system and interacting, just energy expenditure, right? Sorry, just people putting in that effort. People have their job to do. So there's technology, and I think for us, we do a really nice job of weaving in. But why is this worth it to me? Like you kind of mentioned, is it helping me get paid better, or am I happier with my job? Do I feel more connected with the company vision? A lot of benefits.
In this Zenger podcast, another major point they made is that executives, managers who consistently ask for feedback are rated and considered more effective leaders. That it's important for me to check in with Jen to see how am I doing. Like, I like to think we wouldn't be lasting 8 years if we didn't have a give and take about feedback. And the podcast, the data is clear. So I would urge you all to watch that podcast and to share it with your leaders and managers. Hey, Adam, could I ask you to just share your screen to show everybody what this kind of interaction looks like in the software? Sure. I found it fascinating.
Okay.
Well, we can get Jen's help if we need it.
Oh, I got you. Just give me a second.
Okay. So, Misty, you don't have a formal feedback system. Go ahead. Take it away.
Okay. So can you see my screen?
No, I can't.
It says StreamYard sharing a window.
Jen?
Can we have chat?
Help. Or can anybody see Adam's screen? No.
So, Adam, I believe, hold on.
Oh, there we go.
Yes?
Yes. Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, so look, we're in Better Works here, and just for instance, what we're kind of talking through is that ability for a manager maybe to give feedback to a direct report, or for me, if I want to request feedback from my manager. So, I'll be Michelle in this company here.
Yeah.
And so within our system, there's an ability to ask anytime feedback. So at any point, because I know at a lot of the organizations that you probably have, there may be some built-in feedback cycles or whatever that looks like. If the cadence is pretty different, or it may not happen at all, which is unfortunate, but a truth at a lot of organizations. With us, we were very templatized, so you're able to provide different templates. Maybe that's around presentation skills or project management, or just requesting sort of basic anytime feedback, and obviously searching for those providers. And so, this is a very simple way to do this. You're searching for those providers. Of course, you can select multiple down here, and if it can go out and they get notified whatever that notification looks like. But what this is really enabling you to do is having that opportunity to broach this conversation that typically is very difficult for employees to have, or to broach with a manager. So wanted to have that anytime feedback, or giving feedback to someone at any point as well. If I wanted to give feedback at any point, this is something that is typically something for a bit more of a mature culture of feedback organization. But if I wanted to search for someone to give feedback to, I can maybe select Jerry on my team. And what I was kind of alluding to before is with Better Works, and what we really see as a best practice is tying feedback or any of those interactions to what are the most important things that Jerry's working on. So we track objectives within our platform as well. They can be at a high level, whether those just are operational, or it's maybe professional development that may be more applicable to some of the assistants, maybe around development or those sort of things. So this is the way that you can visualize it. But once again, this is really very much a tool to enable a better conversation. I think, as someone was mentioning, that it's required for you to have a conversation with your manager, to have a conversation with your organization around why are we doing this and why should it matter.
Right. I want to make a couple of other points, and then of course Adam will take questions. We can take comments. Please put them in the chat, because I think we can all see how this is the future. That a company that would use this kind of software has leaders that really want the conversation. And as a trainer of assistants, I can see how the utility of how putting it in writing is very powerful. And it's certainly easier to put it in writing than it is to say it out loud. It's just tough to say it out loud. Could I have some feedback? How am I doing? Like, we want to believe that we're going to just get it, but it just doesn't happen that organically. So, and then the pandemic and working through webcams is making it even more difficult. So that's why I can see that how this software, if it's supported by the leadership, if they openly and overtly say, we want this for our company. And why do we want this? Because it actually works. Because of that 5-to-1 ratio, that when people get positive reinforcement, you really helped me on that project yesterday, and I really appreciate it. And then to have managers see that kind of feedback. Some companies use, prizes, or, like they can incorporate, what are they called, Adam, officially?
Just kind of, you could be incentive programs or whatever that looks like. But
incentive programs, of course, that's the term.
It's very much a lead by example sort of initiative. This can't feel like this is driven by your HR director and I'm just being told to do this. Check
out one of the questions: is there ever any face-to-face feedback given if you're using the software?
Look, it's a great question. And so what this is, as I was somewhat alluding to, this is really to support a face-to-face interaction. So a lot of the time, really what it does is figuring out, not wasting the first 5 minutes what we're going to talk about, giving a really a level of context for both parties to say, It used to be a face-to-face. I would set up a 15-minute call for follow-on feedback with my manager in a conference room. Now it's over Zoom, but this is really to support those face-to-faces. So we don't want this to be a replacement. What we really see it as be a supplement. So at the end of the year, all of these interactions are recorded. So we're bringing the F word, fairness, which is, I know, the most important thing for managers, and to be able at the end of the year have it very clear about these are the objectives that we aligned upon and said were most important. These are the pieces of feedback that I had. These were the quarterly conversations that we discussed. These were the things that I had to work on. You can see at the end of the year, I have worked on that. Right, just a simple example where typically in a lot of organizations, an assistant doesn't have that, or no one has that in a lot of ways, because it's not supported by leadership. The leadership is coming around because they're understanding that they're not leveraging their most important asset at their organization, which is their people, of course.
Yeah. Misty has a question, Adam. Jen, if you can put that one up on the screen. I'm pretty sure I understand. Let's see. See what you think.
Great question. So HRIS integrations, great question. So for us, we understand that the HRIS system, so for anyone on the call who doesn't, that's a human resources information system. So that's typically houses, your back end HR data, that's maybe payroll, or there's kind of those ADP, success factors, those kind of larger, more traditional softwares. And Misty, so we have some integrations out of the box with some of the bigger HRIS systems like Workday and Success Factors, and we have some technology around an API that can integrate with others, of course. But to Misty's point, this is really to the idea of how does a performance management system fit in your current tech stack? Because people, they live in their email, or they're on Microsoft Teams all the time, or maybe they're in Jira or Salesforce or whatever these systems are. They don't want to have to leave those. And we want to leverage what they're currently using. So through integrations, we're able to do that.
I see this kind of software as the future, as a way to have these conversations, given that, remote and virtual work is now going to be the norm. I mean, because before, what assistants would report to me from all over the world is that these conversations were simply not happening. And therefore, you have had no idea where you stand. And then that, of course, ties right into, not only the annual review, but how about the increase of money, and then the new job description or the new title, or I can see how this could really ease the conversation.
All subjective. So
you have a few more minutes left for questions. Please put them in the chat. Jen, if you can put in Adam's email, which is what is it, Adam? Help us.
Just adam@betterworks.com. Very easy. I've been with the organization for almost 3 years now. So if anybody have any questions, happy to answer any of those. But that ambiguity speaking to pay, unfortunately, it's an issue that plagues females in the workplace. It much more than men, because it really forces that conversation to, when you don't have that legacy of information, you're really forced to take that step.
Wow. And you've seen that in 3 years? You've seen that definite difference between the way females benefit from this software versus men?
Well, it's been shared. I mean, look, I speak with customers all the time. So really those interactions of and having you as a mom, I think as I go, when I used to go to on site, I was always speak to the assistants first, because they know everything. So that's if I wanted an opinion about how better works is doing there. Yeah. So you get the real information from them. But that level of fairness can give someone that capability to just have that conversation with a bit more ammo, and to not feel like it has to be totally self-driven, because it's tough to have those conversations for a lot of people.
We know in this pandemic that HR departments are in something of a crisis. They're in chaos. There's so much that's on their plate. And, I did a demo Adam gave me a demo of this software a week or so ago. And I have to say, I just really see this as the future. And if in fact I'm sure Adam would love to give you some more information, but this is not about selling this so much as presenting to your HR departments and your leaders about what's out there to help stabilize your team and to keep your high producers, because what we know about the millennials is that they are craving feedback, as are people of all ages, but millennials are pretty much demanding it. Is that pretty accurate to say, Adam?
They're leaving because they're not getting it.
Interesting.
I think some of those, traditional finance organizations and something like that are the money isn't necessarily just enough anymore, or whatever exactly. It may be. They require more.
Right.
As it should be, frankly,
I mean, there's a lot that needs to be fixed in our workplace. I see that, you were busy before the pandemic, but you were sharing that business is even more increased given the situation. Would that be right?
There's no touch and feel anymore when you're not really in that office. So it's the organizations who were holding off on making this more agile approach. It's sort of a scramble now to get a hold and get a pulse on what's happening, because it's tough to get a temperature check on an organization when everybody's at home.
Now, what Jack Zenger says is that to ask for feedback and to receive feedback with openness requires some education, but that it is a sign of confidence and it's a sign of courage to do this. If you've heard me at all, you know that I am all about having the power of conversations, the power to connect and not leave it to someone's imagination about how they're doing at a company. Because as I started out with the story about Jen and me yesterday, I didn't want Jen to have to waste any brain space on worrying if I thought she had made a mistake. That eats up, frankly, I'm paying Jen to do work with me, and I don't want her to worry about something unnecessarily. And I think managers need to be trained to do that. And I worked with Olympia Dukakis, so she was one of the best ones out there. So Adam, do you have any final thoughts for us about performance management and where you think the future is headed here?
With what's happened in the last 9 months and with people kind of working from home, I think that this initiative to be agile as an organization around how do we set goals, how do we connect with our people, how do we listen to our people, that's only going to increase. It's going to be done in a lot of different ways. I think through Microsoft Teams. I know a lot of people are using those or whatever it may be, but the ability for leadership and HR to reach their people is only going to increase. So it's exciting.
It is.
Unfortunately, there's been some tough catalysts to make this move happen, but it's pushing a lot of very traditional organizations to say we're doing something wrong and we got to change it.
Yeah. And, good people are leaving in favor of companies that are reacting and being responsive to what's needed out there. Because goodness knows there's enough stress and anxiety in the workplace without adding to it by making people afraid and fearful about their future. Rumors and who's getting fired and are we getting furloughed? And this kind of software adds to the transparency and the accountability of leadership, which I think is a great thing. So we are so grateful to have you here, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us. And
thanks for having me. I had a great time. It went so fast.
I know. Adam's contact information is in the chat, as is betterworks.com. If you want to check out the software, and I'm sure, Adam, you'd be glad to answer questions just about performance management in general.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to point you in the right direction for what you might be looking for too. I have a decent amount of, I can answer most things, but happy to point you in the right direction if you're looking for something. Yeah.
HR is just struggling to get us together, get us organized for this next decade. I believe executive assistants could be really integral in bringing information like this, like the podcast. Watch it for yourselves and then see if you think your leaders and your HR professionals would find it interesting, because Jack doesn't talk about it. Adam, Jack didn't talk about performance management software, but I really think that's what they were alluding to in it. They were sticking with feedback. So yeah, Vanya is telling you that you've got a great tool. Vanya's from Italy. Totally with you. Yeah, we need to compare notes and share this kind of information with our leaders. I hope you will consider coming to us on Saturday, December 5th. Jen, if you could put up the link for December 5th, I'm going to be doing a virtual event called Aha Moments with Bonnie Low-Kramen, virtually on Zoom from 10 to noon Eastern Time. We'd love to have you with us as we talk about the burning issues in our workplace today, including the wage gap, negotiating for more money, workplace bullying, working from home. You got it. The list can go on and on and on, and we may add feedback to the list. And of course, Be the Ultimate Assistant on Demand is available on our website, and Vicki Evans and I would love to support you on demand or in your companies, however you need training. The most important thing is that you and your team get the training you need that is specific and relevant to your roles. We can help our managers become better ones by presenting material like you've learned today. So Jen, come on back and let's wrap us up for today. Any final thoughts from you, ma'am?
That was amazing.
All right.
That was awesome, Adam.
So glad.
Yeah, I learned a few things.
So Maria is saying that she schedules quarterly meetings. It's very haphazard. It's not streamlined at all in the global workplace. And BetterWorks happens to be global. Again, it's not the only software out there, but the future will be about creating an environment where we can give and receive feedback in an easy way. So let us commit to that. And we've got a good surprise for you for next Wednesday as well. Again, Adam Kramen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Helping us. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
See you next week, everybody.
Bye-bye.